I'm Alex, and today we're identifying the new arcane tradition, the Bladesinger. Now, this arcane tradition embodies the idea of the spell sword. Being able to elegantly move your way around the battlefield, dealing damage with your sword, and also being able to cast spells is exactly what you want in a spell sword-gish type character, and the Bladesinger delivers on that promise. This arcane tradition used to be restricted to elves, but that is no longer the case. At second level, you get training in war and song. Along with that, you get a couple of proficiencies. First, you get light armor proficiency. You also get proficiency in one-handed melee weapon of your choice. And then you also get proficiency in performance. Having proficiency in light armor is very important for this subclass because although you're not going to necessarily be in the front lines of battle, if you want to be able to do your attacks with your weapon, you're going to be in a dangerous melee range. So having that little bit of extra armor really helps without having to cast mage armor every single time, though it doesn't negate the usefulness of mage armor, which is a 13 plus your dex, whereas studded leather only gives you a 12 plus your dex. Also, having that proficiency in one-handed melee weapon of your choice opens up the options so you're not blade singing with just a dagger. Having that skill proficiency in performance is not the most mechanically useful thing, but it is very flavorfully sound as the Bladesinger has a very elegant way of fighting. Also at second level, you get the Bladesong feature, which is completely defining for this subclass. As part of this feature, as a bonus action, you can begin your Bladesong, which lasts for a minute, provided you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. The Bladesong ends early if you are wearing medium or heavy armor, have a shield, or make a two-handed weapon attack. You can also end it early if you so choose. You can use your Bladesong a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. While you're in your Bladesong, you get a number of benefits. First, you get a bonus to your AC equal to your intelligence modifier. Your walking speed is also increased by 10 feet. Additionally, you have advantage on acrobatics dexterity checks, and you have a bonus to your concentration checks to maintain concentration on a spell that you have cast equal to your intelligence modifier. Now, the Bladesong ability is immensely powerful, and the reason it is that way is because as a wizard, you have very low survivability in this melee dangerous combat area. So it needs to be to make sure that you don't go down right away. The added bonus of intelligence to your armor class is insane, and it stacks with your dexterity. So you're adding both your dexterity and your intelligence to your AC. So even if you don't get magical armor, once you have a 20 in your intelligence and your dexterity, you're going to have a 22 AC with studded leather armor while you're in your Bladesong. And even though you have this insanely high AC, that doesn't mean you're going to be surviving better than maybe a heavily armored fighter or a barbarian in the front, because you still are rolling your wizard hit dice, which is only a D6. So you're not going to be having that much hit points, especially if your con modifier isn't very high, which is one of the big problems with the Bladesinger. Having to rely on your intelligence and your dexterity and also needing that constitution to hold your own in melee, you're already looking at a very multi-ability score dependent class. But having that added walking speed while you're in your Bladesong does help with maneuverability and being able to kind of get out of combat because you're really not going to want to be in those front lines. And also the advantage on acrobatics checks can be useful out of combat as well. There are situations where you may want to invoke your Bladesong while you're not fighting somebody, though those situations are few and far between. Especially now that with the new release of the Bladesinger, you're going to be bladesinging far less often. Finally, that bonus to your Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration is very useful for the Bladesinger, especially if you're able to pick up Warcaster later on. Then being hit isn't going to hurt you as much with those concentration checks. At 6th level, we get the extra attack feature. Now, we're all very familiar with this, but the Bladesinger gets a little something extra with it. As normal, when you take the attack action, you make 2 attacks instead of 1, but the Bladesinger can also replace one of those attacks with a cantrip of their choice. Now, this is very powerful and exactly what the Bladesinger needed. Now, when the Bladesinger originally came out with the Sword Coast Adventures guide, it was really great because they had that booming blade, green flame blade, and sword burst, but you couldn't really use those cantrips without sacrificing that extra attack that you get at 6th level. So you really had to wager whether I should cast Booming Blade or attack twice, and that wasn't a fun decision to make. So now with the new release of the Bladesinger, you're able to do both, which I think really helps reinforce the identity of the Bladesinger, as now you can actually cast your spells and still attack. Not to mention, it's also very powerful. With the sword cantrips, you're already making a melee attack as part of them. With this modified extra attack, you're still making the 2 attacks, but with the cantrip, the sword cantrips, you're also getting an extra effect on top of that, which is usually extra damage. At 10th level, you get the Song of Defense feature. What this allows you to do is when you take damage, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage by expending a spell slot. The amount of damage you reduce is equal to 5 times the spell slot's level. This really adds to your survivability as a Bladesinger, which is a really powerful ability in conjunction with your already high AC. This can also help you in a pinch if you're unable to use your Bladesong anymore till you take a long rest, because you're able to reduce the damage even if you're a lot easier to hit. Lastly, at 14th level, we get Song of Victory. What this allows you to do is while your Bladesong is active, you can add your intelligence modifier to the damage of your melee weapon attacks. This is incredibly powerful even though it comes late in the game. You're able to add your intelligence on top of your dexterity on your melee weapon attacks. That is very good, and if you have 20s in both, you're gonna add plus 10 to every time you hit with your weapon. And that's it for the Bladesinger features. Now, what do I think of this subclass? I think it's very powerful, though it does have some problems. It's really hard to play a Bladesinger if you're not rolling for stats or have a modified point buy where you have more points, because it is so multi-ability score dependent. You're really depending on having intelligence and dexterity being high, and you need that constitution to maintain concentration and just to basically survive because you're rolling such low hit dice. Even with the Bladesinger being multi-ability score dependent, I would still rank this at a solid 4.5 out of 5 cauldrons under normal circumstances. On the other hand, if you did roll for stats or you have more points to play with, then I would give this a solid 5 out of 5. I really like that this is able to fulfill that spell blade fantasy while also still being mechanically viable, which is a hard thing to do right. I also really like that the fix for the Bladesinger to make them more survivable in combat wasn't to give them more hit points, but it was instead to give them a higher AC. I think that's very thematic as they're dancing around the battle elegantly. They are very hard to hit, but once you hit them, they go down hard. So I'd love to know, do you agree with my opinion? Do you think that the Bladesinger should be ranked as high as it is, or do you think it should be a little bit lower on the ranking list? I would love to hear your thoughts if you want to leave them in the comments down below. And if you support what Ben and I are doing here, please consider subscribing or even just hitting a thumbs up on this video. That would help us immensely. Otherwise, I hope to see you on our next short rest.